Hello everyone, let's talk today about the Godox TT520 III Flashgun. Now this is a sponsored post. I don't take many of these unless it's something that I'm really intrigued by and think will be really useful and think will be useful for my viewers too. With all of that said, these are still my opinions based on my experience of being a professional photographer for 30 years. If you want the long story short, this is a breath of fresh air. In an overcomplicated world, this thing is super simple and wonderful. It's a really versatile lighting solution that can really enhance your creative possibilities. Only works in manual, and that means that it's absolutely wonderful for anyone that is hoping to really learn about photography and lighting and really understand how all of those things work. Also, for anyone that already understands all of those things, it's a breeze to use. Maybe not for anyone that's just kind of a spray and pray merchant into program mode, because you do have to be a thinking photographer to use this, or you have to be willing to learn. And those two things are wonderful things, I think, and I encourage both of them. Okay, let's talk a little bit about history. So going back to the 1980s, 1990s, we're shooting film. Everyone was shooting pretty much manual. Flashguns like Mets, like Vivitar 283s, which I have one here. These things are vintage now, but there was something kind of beautiful about that kind of kit that everyone knew you had to have a certain level of experience and knowledge to be able to use that stuff and get good results. But once you knew it, once you'd learnt it, it was very reliable, very cool. Along comes auto flash on speedlight fashions. I think the Canon T90 was my first automatic speedlight, and as soon as that arrived, I sort of felt this level of control leave a little bit. That it was kind of cool because you could plug it on the camera and forget about it to some degree, but it was not that reliable, and sometimes you just didn't know what it was doing. As time has kind of progressed, we've got many more systems, multiple off-camera systems are available, multiple speedlights are available, but they seem to have increased in complexity, and to the point of almost absurdity sometimes. So when this little thing kind of came to my attention, it kind of just brought back a flash of inspiration from the past, of just a time when everything was a bit more simple. And I've been using it for a while, and that is exactly how I have found it. The great thing here is that this thing clips onto any camera. It's not TTL, so you can put it on your Canon, put it on your Nikon, put it on your Panasonic, put it on your Sony, and it will just work in manual mode. Let's go on to talk a little bit more about some of the different features. Okay, what about power? Well, it goes from 128th power all the way, and you flick through it with this really cool little screen on the back. We'll go on to talk about that in a minute. But all the way up to full power, and full power is more than enough for most purposes. You're never going to be able to beat a fully off-camera flash studio setup that costs many thousands of pounds with something small like this, but it does a reasonable good job. It bats well above its weight, and I tested it with my light meter against this, which is the Godox 300 off-camera flash, which I use quite a lot because it's sort of small and portable, and actually it's not punching that far below. I think it's about sort of half a stop below, so you know, that's not bad in such a small unit, is it? Let's pop that back. It has a perfectly weighted tilt and swivel head. There's no button to lock it or unlock it. It just has kind of the most, I think, just about perfect amount of resistance for both. It has a lockable hot shoe, which means that you can lock it onto your camera, or you can lock it onto something like this if you want to, which is just a really simple off-camera bracket, which it would just go on and sit on a lighting stand like that. Let's pop that down. Which brings me on to the next thing. With this flash gun, you also get this little trigger, which is a really simple trigger to fire the flash gun. There's no control. It just goes onto your camera and it fires the flash gun. And it works really well. The range works up to about 25 meters. It won't go kind of through a house or through a building, but it'll certainly go through a window if you're kind of trying to fire the flash inside a house, something like that. And it works just about exactly as you think it will work. And that is super useful, and it just kind of comes with the flash gun. This thing takes these slightly odd little batteries, A23 batteries, but I just bought a bunch of those on Amazon for not very much money at all. This thing works with AA batteries. Now, everyone will have something different to say about that, and for a while we were kind of, Flashgun started to use their own rechargeable units, but what's happened to me certainly is that I've ended up with so many different chargers and so many different leads and so many different battery systems that I kind of often get lost, to be perfectly honest. So recently, I always end up carrying an AA battery charger with me. You can charge this thing off of USB battery pack thing, or from the mains, whichever way you like. But I've always got one of these with me because I've got loads of different things that use AA batteries. So actually, it's quite nice. It's quite refreshing to go back almost to the old days for AA batteries. I use any Loop rechargeable ones, and they do amazingly well, or you can just go out and buy a pack, which is really versatile if you're sort of on the road or traveling. It's not the fastest thing in the world to recycle, I'll be honest, but you can buy a battery pack to go into the side, but I don't think anyone's going to be looking at something like this for sort of super fast shooting, that's for sure. So in terms of the controls, there really is not very much at all to talk about. There is an on and off switch, which is just an on and off switch. There is a mode button, which just turns on S1 and S2, which is just basically an optical slave unit, which means that if you fire another flash gun, this thing will go off. And then there is an up and down power button. That's it. And then a test button for flashing it. Now, the thing that is truly wonderful about this is that you have this lovely bright screen with big numbers on that just comes on and off just when you want it to. Whenever you press a button or whenever you want to see it, it's kind of lit. It's almost like using the very best of newest technology with the very most simplistic of oldest technology. And I love that. I love it when you can fuse those kind of things together in that fashion. Okay, so let's talk about who this is for and how we might use it. So let me talk about my own situation to begin with. So I've been building for a little while now a little travel kit which sits in a specific bag. I don't have it here with me today, but using a simple small body. At the moment it's the Canon R8, a couple of different lenses, lightweight lenses, and that's pretty much it. And that bag goes with me pretty much everywhere. Because I have this situation where I am a professional photographer and I go out on assignment all the time, but I also have photography as a hobby. And what I find is that I don't, if I'm going out in the evening or something, I don't want to take all of my big cameras and lighting with me, but I want something just in case a situation develops where I might want to take some pictures, right? And so this thing has slotted into that travel setup really nicely. It just sits in the bag, the trigger sits in the bag, because if I've got a flash gun, I want to be able to trigger it remotely. Just say, for example, that situation arrives where you want a bit of off-camera flash rather than direct lighting. Works really well for that. So who else is it for? The reason I use it in that setup is because I use whatever is the right tool for the job depending on what it is that I'm shooting. So sometimes I'll need a big studio setup of different lights and I'll use that. Sometimes I'll need no lighting at all and that will be the right tool for the job. So I choose whatever is right. For the moment, this is right for me for my travel kit. I would say that if you are a photographer that is trying to learn, and there are so many people that will just happily stick an automatic light on their camera and use that to take pictures. And I know many people that have adopted that approach. They don't really understand light. They don't really understand what the flash gun's doing. And I think that's a terrible way to learn. It's a bit of a kind of, it is Russian roulette basically in terms of lighting. If you're trying to get serious about your photography and learn, then something like this, holy moly, you will learn more from using this than you will from any other automatic TTL flash gun, that is for sure. Especially when you couple it with an off-camera trigger. Now also, so this is for someone that's trying to learn and understand lighting. Also for anyone that just likes messing around with different cameras. And I know that a lot of people will have different setups or will be changing cameras quite regularly. And with a flash gun that is specific to your camera, you have to change flash guns as well, and that gets expensive and annoying. Whereas this thing, you can mess around buying and selling cameras and using different systems, and this thing will work with all of them, or all of them that I've tried it on, that's for sure. Because it just has the simple one thing trigger in the middle. It's not got all the contacts that other cameras have. Also, that negates this problem of actually making the contact. So some cameras, you know, you will probably have experienced this if you've been around flash guns for a long time. The many different contacts can sometimes not work due to corrosion or whatever, and that can cause speed lights to malfunction. This thing doesn't really have that because it just has the one clear contact that needs to fire. So anyone that wants to learn, anyone that likes messing around with different camera bodies at all, anyone that is intrigued by creative possibilities, I think this thing is amazing for that. I think that you can stick this thing in different places, you can fire it into umbrellas, you can really feel what the light is doing by adjusting the manual output. You can be shooting in manual, you can play with it all day long, and it will be consistent and reliable and offer you some fantastic lighting solutions that really do enhance your creative possibilities. Also, it could be for someone that is a very experienced shooter who shoots in manual, who understands the difference between 250th of a second and f8, who understands what happens when you change aperture up and down, who understands what happens when you move the light closer and further to a subject, who understands all of those things almost instinctively. And after so many years in the game, I am one of those people. And I find myself reaching for this because it is just such a simple solution for some things. So anyone that is a learner, anyone that wants to play with different cameras, anyone that likes exploring creative possibilities, and anyone that really knows what they're doing. The only person that I would suggest this isn't for is someone who really doesn't understand light, doesn't understand photography, doesn't understand the settings in their camera, doesn't understand any of those things, and just, you know, will not understand, basically. Also, I guess this thing is not necessarily the most perfect single tool for a professional photographer, because professionals need to have the right tools for the job, right? So I have multiple different systems that I use for multiple different assignments. With that said, let's dive into this box and see what else you get. I'm not going to do any of that unboxing nonsense, but let's see what else. You get some silica gel, and you get an instruction book, and you also get a little mount and a lens cleaning cloth. These mounts are very cool because for two reasons. One, because they have the screw fix on the bottom, which means that you can put it on a tripod or a lighting stand, and also just snap these things in there, and it will stand up if you want it to. So, you know, if I was doing a lit picture in this room, I could put this on its stand and then bounce a flash off the roof and then take a picture, and it would be kind of cool. So there we are. I hope this has been of some use to you. I've found this thing intriguing. It's like a blast from the past. It's a breath of fresh air. I would encourage you, if you're thinking about learning Flash, I would encourage you to go down the route of looking at something like this. And I believe there will be a link to this product. Who knows? Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.